Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's your girl, it's your host, Miss Wedeh Guar, and today I happen to have someone who I believe is a phenomenal woman on this episode with me. When we did a pre interview, I tend to gravitate towards positivity, good engagement, and someone to bring actionable strategies, tips to my audience. Not so much about single parenting, but something to enhance our growth as humans, as women. And this is something that we are lacking in this day and time. And Miss Susan, before we delve deep into today's topic, I would love for you to please give our audience a brief bio or intro about yourself.
Weddy, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be
No
here
problem.
today. We did have a lot of fun in our
Yes, we did.
pre-interview, so I think we could have recorded that and given the world
Yes.
a ton of really good stuff. But I am an executive coach. I'm very passionate about people being
Mhm.
in charge of their careers. We know so many people that have had the ups and downs of careers, and they're like relationships, right? Like there's the good, the
Right.
bad, the ugly. But I've seen too many people wake up one day and
Mhm.
say, I'm here, why not here? So I left a career in talent acquisition where I help people navigate and negotiate the beginning of their careers for over 30 years. I hate to say that. For over 30 years. And now I help people be in the moment of today and figure out what behaviors are serving them and what behaviors aren't serving them so that they can move forward to have the
Mhm.
career and the life that they want, which is why I'm really excited to talk about today's topic.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here you have it. Miss Susan have given you a brief intro about herself. And today's topic is something that I'm not even going to be sugarcoating anything, Susan. We're both authentic. And I think and believe that authenticity drives value to certain things in life or to mostly everything in life. Today's topic is going to be or is about boundaries. What does setting boundaries mean to you?
So, setting boundaries is
Yes.
probably one of the hardest things that I see people do in their careers because they think that boundaries is a direct reflection on who they are or how they're
Mhm.
showing up. And it's almost a conversation that people shy away from. When
Yes.
I started putting together my understanding of the way the world works and how things happen, there are really
Mhm.
8 career narratives that you're responsible for talking about in your career with those around you. And this is the one that we shy away the most from because we think it's a reflection on our work or how we
Yeah.
show up. And really, it's a reflection on our self respect.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one thing, like I previously said, setting boundaries as a 9 to 5 single working mother, I feel like when we set boundaries, we're afraid that we're going to lose. But then, 9 times out of 10, a lot of us don't know what boundaries are. We don't even know the benefits of boundaries in our career and in our personal lives. So, how can a single mother implement boundaries in her life and then stand on it, especially when it comes to her career?
So, boundaries are really important because if we don't set boundaries, a couple things happen. Number one, we become
Mhm.
resentful.
Yes.
And if we haven't set boundaries in the beginning, it's hard to
Hmm.
go backwards and set those boundaries. So, what happens at the beginning, let's say, of a new job? You get this new
Right.
job and you feel like you have to prove yourself. I have to prove myself. I have to show
Hmm.
that I'm worthy. I have to
Right.
be the person that shows up and does it right every time, which just isn't the reality of being a human being, right? Like you just don't show up and
Hmm.
you're perfect.
Right.
So, some of the things that you need to do to set boundaries is number one, you need to understand what you need out of life. So if you're a single mother and you've got to pick up your kids every day at 5 o'clock, that's a boundary that you need to set. If you're working for an employer who's not going to let you get off at 5 o'clock every day or whatever time you need to get off, this isn't the
Mm-hmm.
right job for you.
Right.
But because, and I'm, I'm going to be really upfront, I'm not a single mother, but I
Yes.
am
Yes.
a woman who has climbed the corporate ladder. I understand what
Yes.
scarcity feels like. We feel
Mm-hmm.
that scarcity of needing the paycheck, needing to
Right.
feel like we are, valuable to the team. And so when somebody asks us for something, our first inclination is that we need to prove ourselves. And so we
Mm-hmm.
need to say yes. And that's not the case. Your job is going to be there tomorrow. It is about having the honest conversation about what's happening. You know what? I would love to stay, but I need to pick up my kids at 5. What is
Right.
another option to get this work done? Can
I love
Jenny
that.
take the work? Can I come in tomorrow at 8 o'clock and have it done by 10? I
Mm-hmm.
will not get this reporting done, but I'll get that reporting done. But because we come from a place of scarcity, it's really important that we start to understand our behaviors and our reactions to that need to set boundaries.
Right. Miss Susan, being behind the scenes in HR for 25 years, because I read your bio, right?
Mhm.
Being behind the scenes for 25 years in HR, what are some of the boundaries that you set that got you unstuck in your professional life?
For me, those boundaries were starting to see the value in myself. And so,
Oh,
one of the things that I'd like to say to clients is, are you managing the situation or is the situation managing you?
please. Yes. Oh my
So, if
goodness. That's
the
powerful.
situ- yeah, if the situation is managing you, then you are kind of in that fight, flight, or what is it, fight, flight, or freeze mode where one of
Yeah.
those things is happening. But if you are managing the situation, then you're able to look at the situation in a space away from you and say, what is happening
Mhm.
here? And you
Wow.
are able to say, what do I need to do? So maybe it is, what are the violations on my boundaries here? Is it time? Is it relationships? Is it workload? Start there.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then think about, how am I feeling? I am feeling frustrated because my boss wants me to work past 5 every day. And
Hmm.
I have mom guilt because I know that I need to make dinner and all of these other things. So we're
Right.
feeling guilt on both sides, right? We're feeling
Right.
guilt if we don't stay, and we're feeling guilt if we don't get home. So, what do I need to do to rectify the situation?
Wow. I love that you said that boundaries give you your value to see your self respect. For
Mhm.
me, when I struggle with boundaries, I didn't feel the need that I didn't see that I was disrespecting myself at the time. But when I started to set boundaries in my professional life as to, hey, I'm not going to work extended hours. I'm going to spend time with my kids. I felt respected. I felt respected. I started to see my self worth when, I started to see my self worth reflect in my professional life. As a 9 to 5 working mother, one of the things I struggled with back then was setting boundaries. I felt that if I wasn't honest enough, I will lose this job.
Right.
So when the question was posed to me, hey, can you stay X amount of time to work? I will say yes. But then I said that from a lack mindset.
Yep.
As to always, I needed to have more to provide for my children for rainy days instead of implementing time management within my boundaries and said, once I set this time management for myself, that's also setting boundaries to let my job know my kids come, but I also come first. I want to have this job. This job is providing for me now, but my health comes first. I had to put those boundaries in place to be able to respect myself. I had to put those boundaries in place to be able to see who I am as a woman outside of parenting. Because if I didn't have that, I would be driving home and you talk about the worst guilt ever.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, but I know I have this to do at home. I know I have to wake up in the morning and meditate, and it's the weekend, and they're asking me to work X amount of time. That's going to take away from my self care.
And that's
And
where
I
the
need to
business
care for me.
starts.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like I need to care for me first to be able to care for someone else.
Was there a moment for you
Hmm.
where that clicked and you realized it, or was it gradual?
It was a moment that clicked for me because this is how it all happened. I was going to work and I'm getting the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I am losing myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm losing myself not only in my personal life, I'm losing myself in my profession as well.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that way. And when I felt that way, I started to go, like, what I did was I went back to reflect on how am I losing myself? Where am I losing myself? And who am I losing myself to? I made a list and I came up with these things. This list of, like I said, how, who, and when. I'm like, okay, I'm losing myself to this job. This job can replace me at any time. I'm losing my time away from my children. How do I cultivate that healthy relationship with them? I'm losing myself to myself. How do I get to know what makes me happy? How do I value and see what makes me happy? What do I like? What do I not like? When I started to identify those things, the light went off. The light went off.
I have to imagine it took some time, right? Like it's not like you
Oh,
sit
yes,
down
you did.
and you make a
Yes,
list. It's one of those things
yes,
where a little bit at a time it starts to come together. You start
yes,
to read
yes,
what's happening, and it really is about those feelings inside. One of the things that
yes,
I started doing this year, and I've known that I should do it for years and years and years, right, is journaling. They talk about all the science behind journaling and all of the awareness that comes from it. But if
yes,
you are in a situation right now where you are struggling, I highly recommend 10 minutes of journaling and
yes,
thinking about, am I resentful? What am I
yeah.
resentful of? When I am resentful, what are the feelings that I have inside? You know,
Hmm.
when you think about how the body works and the brain works and all of those things, overworking and feeling the need to prove yourself is a fight response. It's not to save your job. It is a
Yeah,
response. It's so funny because I would see somebody in the corporate arena who was extremely talented, but maybe something was happening in their personal life. Maybe they weren't respecting their boundaries. It could have been a number of things, but they would go on a PIP, right? So they would go on a performance improvement plan. And the first thing that they would do is they would go into that fight response. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove that this is going to happen, and they would start to let those boundaries erode because they would double down so hard on, I am the right person for this job, instead of stepping back and saying, okay, what's happening?
yeah, yeah.
Why did I get this write up or PIP or whatever you want to call it? What's the
Hmm.
note behind the note? So here's the piece of paper. What's happening
Hmm.
behind the scenes that made them want to do this? Is it a me thing? Is it a them thing? Am I no longer right for this job?
You give some good pointers. Yes, you give some good pointers. And at some time, the process for me wasn't easy. And I want us to go back and talk about journaling, especially when it comes to setting boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
I journal now, not because I'm a counselor. I started journaling before I even thought about going to school to be a counselor. For some reason, I thought that if I write it down and I read it, it sticks. It changed something. But at the time, I didn't know the
Yeah.
benefits of it until I went to school, until I started reading about it. So, taking out the time in the morning to journal. I wake up, I'm a 8:30 girl, 8:30 p.m. type of girl. I go to sleep. I know I have minds here too. I go to sleep 8:30. I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Very first thing I do, lay in my bed, deep breaths, affirm my day, do my meditation, get up. I go straight to my journal. I want to have that empty space in my mind to be able to give myself what I need, how I see me today. And when I do that, as I'm journaling, it's mostly like I'm coming from an empty space, but at the same time, it's full of how I see myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm journaling how my day is going to go. I'm journaling my plans for the day. I'm also journaling how I expect this day to go, projects that I'm working on, action that I need to put into this project to achieve what I'm looking for or what I desire out of this project. So it's like journaling is like writing out my life for the day. But at the same time, journaling is healing to me. I don't know about you, but how do you feel about journaling?
For me, it's about understanding my behaviors.
Mm,
So when I am feeling a certain way, am I putting judgment on someone else? Am I putting judgment on
mhm,
the situation? Back to that, am I managing the situation or is the situation managing me? Am
mm,
I in a situation where I'm procrastinating? There are certain things that are really hard for me. And so it's
mhm,
easier for me to pull the ostrich and put my head in the sand instead of doing it. So for me, journaling is really about like, how am I feeling? What behaviors am I attaching to that? And what
mm,
do I need to be doing instead? And that's really where I spend my time, a lot of my journaling time and
mhm,
conversations with myself. And I like to just free flow for 10 minutes and then maybe highlight or pick a couple things out of that and go back and
mhm.
think a little more about it.
Okay. So when you say that journaling, sometimes, thinking about you presenting yourself or you judging other people, do you also feel the need that if we set boundaries or when we set boundaries, are we expecting to reap some form of benefits?
When we set boundaries,
Hmm.
it helps us understand our feelings, in my opinion,
Hmm.
right? Like, why is this boundary so hard for me? Is it because
Right.
I feel like I'm not enough? Is it because I feel like I have something to prove? Is it
Hmm.
because I'm afraid that if I set this boundary, I won't be successful?
Hmm.
So for me, that boundary is that space of unknown and almost looking on the other side and what is waiting.
Mm. So, do people like when we set our healthy boundaries, right? because not all boundaries are healthy. Some can
No.
be very resentful.
Yep.
When we set our boundaries, are we expecting others to acknowledge our boundaries?
It's funny. I coach a lot on boundaries at work,
Uh-huh.
and boundaries are something that you have to say out loud. And a lot of times, the problem I see a lot of problems where we want to hold people to our level of expectations, and we
Yeah,
forget that everybody is coming from a different space.
right.
So my boundary is because of a standard that I hold or a need that I have in my life or something that is going on. And when someone can't accept my boundary or understand my boundary, a lot of times there's judgment or there's hurt or there's something, a feeling that comes out of that. When we need to go back and reflect, to have a conversation, understand what's going on. Maybe your boss is upset because you are talking about a workload boundary, right? Like the
Mhm, mhm.
workload that I have right now is not something that I can get done in 8 hours a day. Well, your
Right.
boss is feeling all these different pressures, maybe from the business, from their boss, from a project that needs to get done. So it is about having the conversation about why your boundary isn't working for them or you.
Mhm,
But you also have
mhm.
to understand where people are coming from, and then you've got to find compromise. Okay, here's the
Yeah.
deal. Tonight, I've got to pick my kids up at 5, as I do every other night. Tomorrow, I'm going to reach out to my mother, brother, sister, whoever, to see if they can pick up the kids. I'm happy to do that.
Mhm. So, how do you think people should react to others when they have set their boundaries? Because I remember you saying that boundary needs to be spoken out at times. How do you think people should react when their boundaries are set?
We have to remember that we're all coming from different places, right? Like there's
Okay.
the person who has two people at home, there's the person that's in the sandwich generation. We moved my
Right.
parents in 7 doors down, so I have different responsibilities. So it's understanding what people can and can't do and respecting the boundaries, but being very honest about what is happening for them. So we've got a big project that's due. We're under a deadline. If we don't get this project done, the company's going to lose millions of dollars. All acceptable. You hired me to do a job. When you hired me to do this job, I was going to be able to get off at 5 o'clock every day, or I was going to be able to get off at 6 o'clock every day.
Mhm.
Or when you hired me to do this job, I was going to be responsible for all analyst work and leading a team of analysts. Now you're asking me to take on an additional department. What can we give and take here? How do we set priorities? And you have to have those conversations. But unfortunately, what happens is when we're given extra work, a lot of times we just double down. We're like, okay, I'm going to get
Mhm.
this done because we're in that space of there's nothing else. But it is the conversations that need to
Mhm.
happen that show that you're managing the situation. Doubling
Yeah.
down, putting your head down. That is what my generation was taught. Like, suck it up, buttercup, live with it. That's just how it is. But
Yes.
that's just how it is, isn't sustainable.
Mhm. Wow. You leave me in this wild state of mind because it's like I'm sucking up this information that you are giving. I'm sucking up every tips and bits that you are giving. How can an individual set boundaries in their personal lives and their professional lives?
It's about lining up and understanding, like, what do I need to feel successful at life and home?
Hmm.
It's looking at your values and making sure that you're not pushing your values onto someone else with judgment, but you're just keeping them aligned for you. And then
Right.
it's having the conversations. It's saying it out loud at home and at work. Listen, right now, my job is really important to me because I
Mhm.
want this promotion, because this next promotion is going to give us this, this, and this. So I need
Mhm.
some flexibility here. And sometimes it's saying it with the kids, like, our kids run over our boundaries probably more than anyone else does when we're
Yeah.
young. We have the guilt, we have the love, we want them to be more successful than we are. And so we say yes to them as much as we say yes at work.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we set personal boundaries, it's more for ourselves and family, right? But in the professional world, when you set boundaries sometime, they will look at you as to you don't want this. This
Oh,
is not your job.
right.
So yeah, this is not your business, this is not your corporation, you have nothing to do with this. We just need you. Well, we don't need you, we just want you for this time, for this x amount of time for you to complete this task. So when we're setting boundaries at work, in our in our professional lives, what are some of the negative feedback that we should be open to receiving? Because when you set boundaries, not everyone is going to be acceptance, like an acceptance to your boundaries. What are some of the negative feedback that we should get? Because, yeah, we're all going to get something negative back.
I mean, you hear it all the time. I don't think you want this. Um,
Yeah.
Jack is willing to work 24/7. That's just what we have to do right now. Uh, it's just, it comes and comes and comes. And that may be a sign that you may not be in the right space in your life too. When I work with my clients, I talk to them about the 9-year career. So we start with where are we right now and where do we want to be in 9 years? And then we line up personal, professional, financial, all of these other pieces on this chart, and we look at where is the misalignment. So I was working with a woman that wanted to be a vice president in 9 years, and she hadn't had kids yet. And so as we started to line everything up, what we do is we work from both ends and we come to the middle and we look at where are the misalignments? What's happening right now or what's happening in 5 years that may not work together? And so it's a give and take. It is one of those things that says, she was like, I want to have babies in these years. So maybe I'm not going to make it to vice president by this point because in these years, I want my personal life to look like these things. And when my child goes to kindergarten, then I'm going to have a nanny or I'm going to do things a little differently. But we started to work things out. We adjusted where she wanted to be at salary wise, where she wanted to be at career wise, and we added a little time to it. I worked with another woman who came to me. She was a director of communications and she was like, I want to be a VP. And so I was like, well, why do you want to be a VP? And she's like, well, that's what's next. I'm like, okay, so let's look at what that's going to take for you from a professional standpoint, from a communication standpoint, because she was having some communication struggles, not with the job of communications, but with managing up to her boss. So we worked on a plan of what managing up would look like and what she was willing and not willing to do to get to that VP.
Your expertise, it sounds very difficult, but then at the same time, I truly believe that when those ladies took those plans and put actions to them, they nailed it. Because by you explaining how you work from both ends and come to the middle, that means that you had to work, she had to work, and you guys met at a place where you both understood this is what you need to do to achieve your goals moving forward on the next step. I love that. I love that because with growth, you're going to expect some complication. And
Absolutely.
that doesn't mean that you're not growing. It means that you're changing. If you're
Absolutely.
stagnant, yeah, if you're stagnant, there's no change. So because you're changing, you're going to face some obstacles, but just like you said, suck it up, buttercup, and let's keep moving. Let's keep putting in this work. Yeah, let's keep putting in this work and keep moving forward. Yeah, I love that. Boundaries is something that I feel that when we set boundaries, we're not always going to get positive results. But then at the same time at work, when we set boundaries, it takes a it takes us away from being burnt out. You're not experiencing burnout at work. You're also gaining your self-respect, not only from your boss, but you're gaining self-respect, or you're gaining respect from your peers that you work with at work, your colleagues, whoever they are to you. You're also gaining respect from your family because they know, okay, work comes first. Mom told us that she needs this job to get to where she wants to be financially, not only for herself, but for our family.
Right.
So once those boundaries are set, those are some of the positive things about boundaries, right? And that's why I love boundaries. I stand, I mean I live by boundaries, but I don't want to be resentful. I don't want, yeah, like I don't want to come from this place of, okay, I'm just gonna leave you where you're at. I'm not dealing with you, so I'm just gonna build up this, break wall to stay away from you. So, what are some of the benefits that you have reaped in your personal life when you set boundaries?
The biggest benefit is I have lunch with my dad every Thursday. He's 88 years old, and um, it's an important thing to me. He's not going to be here forever. My mother is aging. So I have started to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And when you say no,
Hmm.
you're saying yes to something else, right? When you are making a decision, you're making a decision for something else. It snowballs. So, spending more time with my kids, spending more time with um, my parents, my husband. I set a boundary about what time I'll start seeing clients in the morning, so that I've got one kid at home still, so that I can make sure that he gets coffee before he walks out the door that I've made, so that I can have the conversation. It's just opened me up to more of me, and less
Hmm.
resentment, less stress, because I am self-authoring what I want my life to look like.
Yeah, I love them. Me setting boundaries with my children, we both have something similar. Like we both have something common. I have one kid still at home. I still have one kid at home, right? How fortunate am I? Right.
It's almost
I,
over.
right. It's almost over in what, 5 years? 5 years.
You got
So,
longer. I don't. I have just a year.
oh, okay. So, being that I still have one kid at home, I have to set boundaries. In the morning, we're not going to make a lot of noise because this is my main time.
Yep.
I understand, like, you like to get up and just throw stuff. I don't know if it's intentional, but it's like when you get up, I hear it upstairs. Like I just hear banging and I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So be careful how you move around. I don't want to be hard on you about not being yourself in your space, but know that I love peace and quiet in the morning. And when I did that, me setting boundaries with my son allow him to understand it's okay for me to set boundaries too with other people. Learn how to say no when needed. Learn how to say yes when needed. So I feel that when we set boundaries and our children see us, we're like a role model to them.
Yep.
They look at us as role models because kids are like sponges. They suck up everything that we do around them. They see it, they want to try it. So now he's going from saying yes to his friends all the time to no, I don't want to play no game today. I just want to read a book. I just want to be myself. I just want to play by myself today. I just want to be in my space. Have that changed for you when you set boundaries at home?
I have a lot of boundary setters in my house. So I feel very comfortable, especially with my second one. He sets boundaries with his friends and he doesn't feel the need to go out when they want to go out or
Hmm.
so I think we're good there. I think you bring up an interesting point though, because think about the person at work who is setting boundaries, and I'm sorry to take you from home to work, but
Okay.
when a whole team is overworked and that one person steps up and says, can't do it, sorry, the rest of the team is watching. And that's leadership.
Yes.
The rest
Yes.
of the team is watching and they're a little relieved and they're like, yes, go, please do
Yes.
it. Because if you're thinking it and saying it, there's somebody else on that team that wishes they were saying it.
Yes. But then they don't have that confidence
Right.
to come out and speak. And I promise you, when I started setting boundaries, that was me. And it still is me. Let me be the oddball. Look
Right.
at me different.
Right.
I truly believe I'm different. Like, look at me different. I'm going to speak up for myself. I don't care if you don't speak up for yourself, but I'm going to speak up for myself. And me speaking up for myself is going to help me and it's also going to help someone.
Someone else.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
it's your kids, whether it's your boss to see. I
Mhm.
was working with a gentleman who had this huge workload, and we talked about, well, what was he willing to do about it? And he started thinking, and he's like, I've got to have a boundary conversation with his boss. And his boss had no idea how much work went into the project that he was doing. He had no idea that one of the executives was calling him every week and he was having to build a separate report to go out to, not him, but someone on his team was building a separate report to go out to that. So,
Burnout was real.
yes. So we think because of our experiences that everybody else understands what's going on. And
Yeah.
sometimes those boundary conversations just help level set what's happening with the team and bring awareness to the situation so that things can start shifting. And people do not want to lose great employees. The expense of losing a great employee is astronomical. So
Yeah.
the more you just have the open communication and you manage the situation, the better leader you're going to be, the happier you're going to be, the better off your team is going to be, and the better the outcome will be because you're working from a place of awareness versus scarcity or fear. And fear drives too many conversations.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because once you're scared, oh my goodness, we don't want to get into, yeah, another can of worm, but it's okay if we do. Like, one, yeah, it's okay if we do.
This is kind of like
Fear.
our pre-meeting. We had a lot of conversations. Yes.
So it's like when when we're scared, I truly feel that when a person is scared, you cannot be yourself.
Right. You can't.
You don't know who you are when you're afraid. And when you're like, well, I'll just give a common example of me. When I lacked boundaries years ago, I was so afraid to speak up. Like you said, that one oddball who would speak up and everybody like, yeah, yeah. I was not that woman before. I was not that. All because I was afraid. I was afraid of being rejected from the
Yeah.
position I was in. I was afraid of people getting to know me and accepting me for my flaws and all that comes with me. And all of that, I mean, I never had smiles on my face. I always presented myself as this tough cookie, all
Yeah.
because I was walking in fear.
Yeah.
And fear will build this bridge or this block around you. Yeah, this brick wall that would have people seeing you as, okay, she's untouchable. She got it going on. There's nothing that bothers her. She knows it all. She has it all. But no. break one wall or just tap a break into my wall back then, and everything will come crumbling down. I promise you, like everything will come crumbling down. Until I could break out of that limited belief of fear and accept myself for who I truly am and start to love the ugly first and then walk into the beauty away from fear. I wasn't able to set boundaries. I wasn't able to believe who I am now. Well, not who I am now, but who I was back then. I wasn't able to just differentiate the woman away from fear. Yes. Yeah. 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 It's like years ago, I worked for this company. I'm not going to say the name, but I work for this company. I work in production. I work, everybody eats well, most people that eat meat. I work at this production manufacturing company in Iowa, well, big known company, right? And I was the supervisor at this company. And I go, like I said, I walked like someone who was untouchable. And I led my team like nothing was or could break me down. I worked out of fear because I wanted to get it done. I'm saying this to say fear can be a good thing at times, but it can also be bad because I worked as if I knew it all, I could get it done. Like you said, prove that you know it all. I had to prove myself then. So I didn't lose, get rid of the job, get out of the position. I had to work that way, right? But now that I sit back with a clear mindset and I'm like, girl, that was you in your 20s. Now that you're in your 40s, can you make anything better to enhance you now? Now, even when I'm scared, I want to perform, to work in a place of vulnerability. Please understand, I'm scared, but I'm still doing it anyway. This is me being myself. Yeah. I love it. I love what you just said. Wow. Am I reacting or am I creating? I'm going to take that with me. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Susan, thank you so much for this episode. You guys have learned a lot today, and so have I. When it comes to boundaries, how you can implement boundaries in your work life. And if you think that you're in the wrong space, it's because you don't have boundaries. And when you do have boundaries and your boundaries tend to have you closed in, that means that space is not for you. It's time to look at some things and move around. Miss Susan, do you have anything else for our audience before we come to a close? Okay. Right. Wow. Are you only on LinkedIn? Are you on any other social media platforms? Mhm. Okay. You guys, here you have it. It was a pleasure having you on this episode. It was a pleasure connecting with you. And I tell all my co hosts, you are not a stranger here at all. You're not. We would love to have you again. Don't know on what episode, but we would love to have you again. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a pleasure hosting this episode with you. Your insights is very much welcome. And I'm very sure whoever comes across this episode, they're going to get good tips, good ideas, and good strategies to implement in their professional life as well as their personal life when it comes to reflection and especially my favorite of all, boundaries. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to miss this episode. Stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram at Solo Shift Podcast, Facebook, Solo Shift Podcast, TikTok, Solo Shift Podcast, YouTube, Solo Shift Podcast, and Snapchat, Solo Shift Podcast as well. We're everywhere. Apple, everywhere, Spotify, everywhere. Thanks for subscribing and thanks for being a good audience. In case we do not see each other, enjoy your New Year's and may your smile be as bright as the sun and your ears as open for every information that comes that is positive for you, to you. Remember, there is no hood like a single parent hood. Stay blessed and be loved.